you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong, strategic, national security-oriented policies. Our movement consists of more than 20,000 people here in Israel, including many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense establishment, who believe that strong national security and staunch Zionism are necessary for Israel to be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into these war briefings. It is so important that we are able to share these updates and analysis with you. We are joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of IDSF. General, it's great to have you with us. And yesterday you had so much amazing material to share. You were on the road. We went in and out a little bit, so maybe we can review some of that today and go in greater detail. So to start with, what can you share with us about what's happening in the war right now?
Well, some interesting updates. We've heard recently Iran is going back to enrichment and enriching more uranium. So while keeping us busy with its proxies and keeping the world busy with the Houthis in the Red Sea and Hamas and so on, Iran is continuing to move forward with its nuclear plans, and it's something that we need to take in account, but the whole globe needs to take in account because this is very, very dangerous for the world and the regional stability. We see still the Houthis active in the Red Sea. We saw also an Iranian attack on a tanker near India, which was on its way actually to India, not towards Israel. And we saw also something that I've been talking a lot about in the last 2 years, Iranians even threatening to close Gibraltar straits. We've seen them very active in North Africa, trying to undermine Morocco, weaponizing Polisario, which is the organization fighting Morocco. We definitely see a strategy, Iranian strategy, that is trying to control world trade by controlling the main straits, the Hormuz straits, Bab el-Mandab, and Gibraltar. And again, this is a global threat. This is not just about Israel. We've seen in the last day the IDF attacking more and more in Lebanon, mainly all the positions that are along the border, a few kilometers from the border inside, in order to push Hezbollah back. Any force that is near the border, Israel is attacking in a very planned and consistent way, pushing Hezbollah north. It's not north of the Litani, it's not 1701, which Israelis are discussing, but it's definitely something important, because if we manage pushing Hezbollah even 4 or 5 kilometers north, this might impact the ability of Israel to bring the citizens back to their homes in the north. Today we heard that the Minister of Strategy, who was also Israel's ambassador in Washington, is flying to the US, mainly to discuss the shipment of munitions to Israel. We have seen a flow of hundreds of planes and ships that were sent, but there is some concerns how fast these munitions are arriving to Israel. And this is why Ron Dermer is flying to Israel. Israel is discussing different platforms they want to get. It was published that we asked for Apaches, which we didn't get a consent yet, and this is something that probably will also be discussed. In Gaza, the ground incursion continues. In the north, the Givati Brigade is attacking in an area called Daraj Tufah, which is the last really position in the north that we haven't taken yet. It's exactly in front of the town of Kfar Aza, and the Givati Brigade is fighting there. At the same time, we have a whole division attacking the central camps in the center of Gaza, and we have a whole division with many brigades attacking in Khan Yunis and moving forward. We've seen in the last 2 days fierce Air Force attacks on the center and the south of Gaza, and overall we see a determination to destroy Hamas. The army is looking and planning in the very long term how to deal with Gaza. It's already planning the phase which will be after the phase we take control and destroy Hamas capabilities. Then we'll have a long time that we'll need to clean up the Gaza Strip. The army is planning at least a year and a half of continuous operations with brigades inside Gaza in order to really clean Gaza from all presence of terrorists and infrastructure. It's a very long term. But as we are moving into Gaza, of course, there is more and more thinking about how we're going to change reality in the north. There is a lot of talk about deal of hostages. There was a Egyptian suggestion. Nothing concrete is happening at the moment. At the moment, we are concentrated on the attack. Maybe when we really pressure existentially Hamas enough, then they will be willing to negotiate some short ceasefire. But Israel is saying clear, we're not going to stop until Hamas will be destroyed. At best, we'll have a few days of ceasefire as we did before, but not anything than that. There is a lot of misinformation on the media. Occasionally, we also see irresponsible ex-generals or politicians trying to discourage the Israeli society and the army. And one of the important things the IDSF is doing is really empowering both the society, the army, and the cabinet to continue and do the job and get the job done and destroy Hamas in Gaza, and also be ready to deal with the big challenge we have in the north with Hezbollah. So Moshe, if you wanna, address questions, that would be a good opportunity.
Okay, so I want to review something you spoke about, I think yesterday, but again, because of the reception, it's worthwhile reviewing in terms of Gaza citizens leaving Gaza. To what extent do you see that as a possibility, other countries opening up their borders if Egypt won't, and they start emigrating out of Gaza? Do you see that as a realistic opportunity for the Gazans to restart their life somewhere else?
So I think that we are witnessing a huge change in Israel's government and society approach to Palestinians emigrating, Gazans in this case, by force, but people who want to emigrate, encouraging that. And the government is doing all sorts of plans. They are talking to different countries. There are several countries, including Arab countries, Canada, Turkey, who are willing to receive migrants from Gaza. And of course, there is the issue of Egypt and its willingness to open the border. Eventually, I don't think they will have any choice. They will have to open the border for people who want to go out. And I think that when many Gazans, because of the terrible situation in Gaza, because also of the understanding that they're going to be ruled by Israel for a long time, this is something that I think encourages many of them to leave. And as long as people want to leave, I think we should facilitate it. And it's not only I think, the government thinks so, the society, the vast majority of the Israeli society thinks that the long-term solution is enabling as many Gazans as possible to emigrate. As long as they are doing it voluntarily and they want to go, we won't, of course, force anybody to go, but I think there will be huge migration from Gaza.
And then in terms of the Egypt border and the Rafah crossing, to what, can you hear me now? Hello? The Egypt border. Danny, are you on the call? Can you hear me?
But I try to get your. One second.
I can hear you.
Okay. Can you talk again?
Yes.
Moshe?
Okay. The denser population now of Gazans on the southern border with Egypt and Gaza. How is the IDF going to clear that area of Hamas terrorists?
So it's going to be challenging. I think that at a certain point, we'll have to move the people from Rafah to the coastal area of Gaza, and maybe also not just in the south where Gush Katif was, maybe also to the center, so move them to the coast area. This is if we don't manage to really make the Egyptians open the border. But we're not at this stage now. At this stage, we're focused on the ground incursion in the center of Gaza and in Khan Yunis, where all the leaders of Hamas are hiding. And there is a huge effort to really find the leadership of Hamas and destroy them or apprehend them. And of course, this can have a huge impact on the issue of the hostages.
One of Israel's very clearly stated goals is to destroy Hamas so that it doesn't exist again. What does that mean? Does that mean all of the leaders need to be destroyed? I mean, at what point can you say Hamas has been destroyed if you still have people who ideologically are connected with Hamas or Hamas leadership outside of Israel? So when can Israel check off the box that Hamas has been destroyed?
Well, it's destroying the leaders, definitely, including the leadership which is outside Israel. And this we understand. This might take a long time. It can take years. But in Gaza, it won't take years. In Gaza, it can happen in the coming months, 2, 3. It's dismantling the governmental and military capabilities of Hamas. This doesn't mean that in the short term you won't have terrorists around Gaza. It means they don't have command and control. They don't have any structure. They don't have way to talk with each other. So I can say that, for example, Hamas today has zero control over the north of Gaza. They cannot even talk to the people. So you have maybe, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 terrorists hiding maybe in tunnels or moving around the northern part of Gaza. This is the estimation of the IDF, but they cannot talk to anybody. What we see is occasionally 2, 3 terrorists or one trying to launch an attack. This is not companies, it's not battalions, it's not brigades. And this reality needs to exist all over Gaza, in the north, in the center, and in the south. And then we can say we destroyed governmental and military force. And of course, it's destroying the leadership. This is what we need to do. And this can be achieved in a month or 2. This is something that doesn't need to take years. Afterwards, dismantling everything and changing the whole reality of Gaza, this will take time.
Let's move from Gaza to a question about Yehuda v'Shomron. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers who are sending in questions in the chat or who bombard me with questions during the week. And very often people ask, about Judea and Samaria, Yehuda v'Shomron, and settler violence. Are you able to address the settler violence issue, if there is an issue, and also the potential issue of Palestinians returning to work in Yehuda v'Shomron and the issues that that could create? Two different issues there.
Yes, we have in Judea and Samaria more than 500,000 Israeli citizens, law-abiding Israeli citizens who contribute to the society. Regular citizens like any citizens in any other place. By the way, in huge numbers, these citizens are now fighting in Gaza. Many of them left their homes on the 7th of October and went to help their brothers and sisters in the kibbutzim and fight Hamas. This society, overall, the people who live in Judea and Samaria, a third of them are religious Zionists, a third of them are secular people who basically looking for a better life, more affordable houses in nice places with nice views. And a third of the people who live in Judea and Samaria are Haredim, which mostly live in the big cities, not in small towns, cities like Beitar, for example. From all these 500,000 people, you have a group, I don't know, maybe 10, 20, 30 people that are people who live in places very close to Palestinian towns and are struggling with the Palestinians. In the last year, today it was published that there was 50% decrease, not increase, decrease in incidents between these settlers. When I say incidents, it doesn't necessarily mean that the problem are the Jewish settlers. Might be in some occasions, but in many times it's them trying to deal with a place where 51% support Hamas and almost 100% support the massacre that happened to our kibbutzim. This is a very radicalized society, the Palestinian society. There is a fight on the ground, and these guys are fighting. So a few people that are being surveilled by Bet were kind of right-wing anarchists. But if you ask me, okay, this phenomena, is it a large phenomena? The answer is no, it's not at all. And both Benny Gantz and Netanyahu and the Minister of Defense addressed this issue in the last weeks and said loud and clear, there is no such thing as settlers' violence. It's like saying New Yorkers' violence or saying Chicago violence. There is no such thing. In any town or in any state or in any area, always you have a group, small group that is not really law-abiding. I can say that we did a research at the time that showed that talking about Jewish society, in Tel Aviv, there are 2.5 times more violence than in Judea and Samaria. So what are we supposed to say? That there is something called Tel Aviv violence? I guess not. But there is no such thing as settlers' violence. And now we have to understand that this name, settlers' violence, is not by chance. This is a whole campaign, orchestrated campaign, to try to delegitimize Jews who live in Judea and Samaria. This is the whole thing, trying to delegitimize a whole society of strong Zionists who want to settle the land of Israel. And I'm saying it as a general in IDSF. Without them settling Judea and Samaria, Israel will not exist. For us, being in Judea and Samaria, it's an existential issue. We have 500,000, we need 3 million, 4 million. in Judah and Samaria. And I think that we and this is what we deal all the time in IDSF, how to settling, how to on one hand, and on the other hand, how to bring those solutions that will enable the Palestinians who live in these areas to have self-governance and conduct their everyday life and according to international law.
Thank you, General. That was a very important answer. And I think we need to take the answer that you just said, put it into a small clip, and share it far and wide with all of our friends in Judea and Samaria and all the people who keep asking about this question. That was a very important answer. Thank you. We have a great honor to have Danny Seaman with us right now. Danny, of course, is no stranger to our briefings. He's the former director of the Israel Government Press Office. And Danny, I have an important question for you, which is very timely. I know you follow the media, you follow what's happening in many different publications. On Sunday, the New York Times published an op-ed penned by the mayor of Gaza City. And then yesterday, I think it was the Wall Street Journal printed a piece by Prime Minister Netanyahu. My question to you, Danny, is who do you think is winning the media war? Is it Hamas or is it Israel?
Well, by sheer numbers, they obviously win, because if you take media and you consider also social media, then you have a 10-to-1 advantage just by sheer numbers on their side. And then if you have the media as in as of itself, the mainstream media, then of course you have those who have been shrills for the Arab propaganda and what they so-called Palestinian propaganda. The fact that they give a platform, the New York Times gives a platform to a mayor of Gaza who is a Hamasnik himself, speaks volumes. So on that level, yes, but the truth may take a little longer, but eventually the truth comes out. And you can see their demonstrations, you can see everything they're doing, you see their postings on social media, but the bottom line is that a majority of the population in the Western world still side with Israel and understand what Israel is doing, because you can make up a lot of stuff, but eventually you can't hide the truth. And the truth is very simple. They are a terrorist entity, anti-democratic, supported by anti-democratic forces around the world, committed horrendous acts of violence against civilians, violated every aspect of international law and of humanity. And it doesn't matter how many people support them, they still are in the wrong. And most people understand that. So when it comes down to it, eventually it will be an Israeli victory, just there as it will be on the battlefield.
I hope that day comes very soon. So you've been in the press office, you know how the IDF spokesperson office works, and not too long ago we had the tragic incident where 3 hostages were mistakenly identified as Hamas terrorists and killed by IDF soldiers in Gaza. This story then was fuel for people who are trying to delegitimize the IDF, trying to put pressure on the government. So my question to you is, this happened in Gaza in a military zone. How does the story come to light? Why does the story come to light? Why does the IDF just not keep it quiet for the next 6 months and then let it come out later? How does that happen?
Well, in the past, you could keep these things quiet because you had a separation between the battlefield and the information coming out. To a large degree, we're preventing journalists from going into Gaza at the moment, something that I was supportive of back in some of the operations when I was with the IDF, with the, not the IDF spokesman, with the government press office, because the presence there limits our behavior and our ability to conduct ourselves in the war zone, knowing that the journalists are there, not to hide anything, but they go into the midst of things and then they point the finger at us if they choose to be there. And no battlefield is clear of mistakes. I was a paratrooper in my service. I served in the war in Lebanon back in 1982. And our first casualties, we suffered from our own Air Force in the battle in Damour, where they were not aware of the fact we were supposed to get in and through the city. And the next day, the Air Force was supposed to hit the city there. But we got stuck in there because one of our commanders made a mistake and went through the center of the town instead of around it. And we took we took RPGs and fire from all directions. The APC in front of me was hit. The tank behind me was hit. I was able to get through with only half of our company. So most of the battalion were still in there. And the next day, our Air Force dropped bombs against the terrorists, but we were there and suffered the consequences of that as well. But this happens in every military, in every conflict. They call it friendly fire. No fire is friendly. But that is what happened. We try to limit that as much as possible. So that's the battlefield and mistakes made there. The other thing is the information coming out of there. And we know that you can't hide that. And worse than the information coming out is rumors spreading. And that can affect two things. First off, the credibility of the IDF. And second, and more importantly, the home front and what people feel at home. And you don't want to weaken the resolve of the public here. So usually the rumors are much worse than the realities. So we try to keep it as honest and as real as possible. And in this case, we very quickly knew and understood what had happened there. The information came out only after the IDF was able to investigate it and understand what the circumstances, or at least what led to the circumstances, and it was still investigated afterwards. And in all, this benefited us in two ways. First off, people had, as difficult and as painful as the information was, they had the fact. And then in the future, if anybody, I mean, they always question us, but when they question us, we can always say, look, when we have information, we do provide it and tell the truth every time. We will address the facts when we have them. If you look at other circumstances, one of the things the IDF does, which has always been, and it continues to be a mistake in my eyes, is we always tell journalists when they come with accusations, especially things that supposedly we did, and what we know we may not have been involved in it, say that. Don't say we'll check. And in the meantime, the media is not waiting. They have a news cycle. They go out and they publish information, and they'll say that the IDF is checking, and then cater to what the terrorists are saying and say the IDF did this. And until the truth comes out, a lot of damage is done to Israel. And I mentioned this in a previous briefing that I gave. So in this case, I think it's good that the IDF is letting the information come out the moment we have full information, and I think we should continue doing that.
Danny, let me ask you, since your days in the IDF spokesperson unit and the government's press office, has Israel's public relations gotten better or worse?
I laugh because, that's the thing that we've always been saying. Not better or not worse, it's very much the same. The only advantage I saw was back 11 years ago. It was the first time it wasn't that we even used social media. It was that a lot of students came to our aid, and they operated on the social media platforms. And for the first time, and this I said to the Prime Minister afterwards, I saw in my 30 years, I saw a game changer. And this is where the public got involved. And they're very much in the heat of it at the moment. At that time, I told the government that we should take a step back, provide information and guidance on what we should be focusing our attention on, but let the public do it. And anybody listening here are very much part of that. When you have the information, share the information that you have from Israel. That the exponential influence of the information getting out there for those who want it. You can't argue and you can't debate and you can't beat anybody who's totally on their side the same way as they can't convince us. But a majority of people, about 60% of people, don't know what's going on. And if they only get the one side, then they'll think that that's the truth. And we have to be ardently on our side and the facts that we have on our positions and let people know what those are. And I think that when people have the truth favors the state of Israel and the Jewish people.
Amen. Danny, thank you so much for
Just
joining.
one thing I forgot to say in the beginning. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all our Christian followers and anybody celebrating.
We should have had you on yesterday. We're a day late. Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers, all of our supporters for tuning in to this briefing and our previous briefings. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Stay safe, stay strong, everyone. Take care.